Hi, this is Nick McClellan from After Hours Productions. You can reach me at 229-388-6438. We are here at Heatherwood Baptist Church, and we are discussing the X32. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna start in the upper left-hand corner of the board, and we have a couple of, we have a rotary encoder, and I wanna go ahead and use the term rotary encoder because you'll notice if you look in the center here, these are rotary encoders, but they're not labeled with anything. So because of that, these buttons and knobs are going to reflect whatever is being utilized here, and you'll notice it changes each time that I change something different. You have the ability to change them here. So these are called rotary encoders, which means they have multiple functions as opposed to one thing. All right, coming back to the top knob, our very first thing is labeled gain. Gain would be the master volume for a channel. So in order for all of this to function properly, we have to select a channel that we're working on. So you notice that when I press the select button on this channel, everything here illuminates with whatever has been added to this specific channel. So we're gonna select a channel, and now we're gonna quickly go over the buttons and knobs, and then we'll break it down further. All right, the first thing is the gain. This is for gain structuring. I like to utilize the illustration of a water spigot attached to the house. This would be the pressure from the well. You know, you got a 2-inch pipe or 4-inch pipe or whatever. This is like the master pressure level going to it. Coming down below, you have the fader here. This would be more like the nozzle at the house. And then over here, whatever you have routed this through coming to the output bus over here would be like a nozzle on the end. So you have the three functionalities. You want to balance the pressure so that you don't have, you don't want to turn this all the way up and pull this all the way down and turn that all the way up because there's not a balanced pressure. The 48 volt is any type of microphone or direct box that you put on the line, on this specific line, that needs power. If you turn this on, it sends the 48 volt phantom power to that unit. This is traditionally used for either direct boxes that are active and or condenser microphones. So the next button over, this is a phase inversion button. The only application that I ever use this in for me is when I'm miking a drum kit in the studio and I put a top snare mic and a bottom snare mic. You'll notice that the heads are pointed towards each other, and you have to make that so that the sound goes through. So you have to invert one of these so that the sound pressure works together, not opposite of each other. So that's why you would turn the phase inversion. The next button over to the right is a low frequency, low cut. It has a couple of functionalities to it. You have the frequency. I will define this in this way. I use the term shelving a lot when I will discuss being able to do a mix. And the reason why they don't just have a low cut that does like from 100 hertz and below is that there are times when you need to raise that, and you can raise and lower the starting point. Like I'm gonna let you view it here. If you watch the as I go left, the numbers go lower. As I go high, the numbers go higher. Traditionally on a vocal microphone, it's about 80. So the next thing we wanna go into is right here, which is your gates and your compressors. And I'm gonna spend a good bit of time discussing them, but right now I'm just gonna give you a quick overview. To turn the gate on, and this is again another rotary encoder.
Haven't been using that.
Okay, well I will give you a good explanation as to why you might want to use this in certain applications. When you turn the gate on, it just means that you're closing something. So if you think about it, a dog in the fence, when you close the gate, dog can't get out. When you open the fence, dog can get out, down. Turning it on is when you press it and it's illuminated. On this console, anything that is illuminated is on. If it's not illuminated, it's off. The view on each of these just enables you to see when you're turning the rotary encoder or pressing the on and off button, what is actually taking place on that channel as you look at it. So a gate, sound in, sound off. Dynamics controls how low or how high the sound is. Give you a quick overview of this. You have 4 singers that are singing. 2 are singing really loud, 2 are singing really soft, and you don't want to be sitting here writing the volume levels trying to balance them out. So you set an upper level compressor which says you can't sing any louder than this, and you set a lower compressor level says I don't want the volume to drop below this. So you create a dynamic range that the vocals have to stay within. The equalization, you have the little devices over here to the side. I don't really know exactly what to call these. These are the modes that they call here. But in essence, what it does, if you look at the If you look at the symbol, it describes what it's doing. Like this is a low cut, which means that anything below a certain point is not being passed through. So like if I turn the view on, and you'll notice, oh, let me turn the EQ channel on. So you'll notice when I turn the low cut on, this is what happens. It says, I don't want anything below this level to actually show up on the sound. So if I'm playing a kick drum right now, you're not gonna hear much of the low end of the kick drum because I just put a low cut on it. The next one is a split, which is the same sort of thing. What it does is like you see how it does it, it allows it to raise up. So there's a sweep down and a sweep up. So that's this type. Then we have this, which is the peak, which means that I can raise and lower a specific frequency by moving it around or by bringing it down and by widening it or narrowing it. And we're gonna go over all of this, so don't get really hung up on it right this moment. So that's what this type of curve does. It's two different of the same one. Now in the low frequency, those are the only options, but you'll notice if I go to the high, it moves it up top. So now I can do a high cut, or I can do the same thing with the peak. I can make it a wide peak or a really narrow peak. I can move it to where I need it to be. I can lower the peak or I can raise the peak. And we're gonna go over all that. The bands that you have here are whether you're on frequency 4, 3, 2, or 1. Higher the number, the higher the pitch. It's the way they've done it. So low frequency, if you're here, you're moving 1. If you press there, you're moving 2. If you move here, you're moving 3. Here, you're moving 4. The Q is the width of the frequency. So like if I turn the gain to the right clockwise, I'm increasing whatever the frequency is, and this can take in more of the bands or less of the bands. The bus sends. The bus sends correspond to what's over on buses 1 through 8 and 9 through 16. So this is redundant of this. The USB recorder, I don't know if you guys are using this currently, but when you stick a thumb drive in here and you have it configured appropriately, you can actually record whatever's coming off the left, right bus here. Main bus and stereo bus. When you do the mono bus, it is actually the volume on, oh, y'all got it labeled as your sub. Depending on the application and your choice here, y'all set to run this as a center bus. And so this bus is controlled here as far as turning it on or off on an individual channel. So if I've selected channel 1 and I have the mono bus pulled up here, this is routing the signal to the output bus here. Okay, the stereo bus, this means that whatever's here is going to be fed to here. Okay, that just gives you the ability to turn your overall volumes up and down. So we're going to do the sub buses, which are in the middle here. And by doing a sub bus, when you select the bus, you're going to route whatever's over here into one of these, which will then output it to here. But you need to have these selected. Okay, moving to this. This is the center control section, and basically what we're gonna do here is this gives us the ability to adjust the internal workings of what we've seen over here, but it also gives us the ability to set up, you know, routers in here, the way we want the board to configure itself from the get-go. It gives us the ability to do the routing, to see what's going on in our real-time analyzers. There's just an awful lot of features that we can see by going into the setup library. The home library at the start is going to show us whatever, all of these that we've adjusted. This is going to give us a global overview, and you'll see the various tabs, which are controlled by moving the tab spaces here. And then the layers, if there's another layer in this, you can see the ability to change, you know, the bottom faders here to be able to see what those other features are that are on the bottom layer behind this. And this really comes more effective when you're in the effects because you can see other things. I generally don't make my changes here with the rotary encoders. I can, but most of the time, if I'm making a change when it comes to compression, gating, or equalization, I do it over here and I look at the full screen for that. Like if I press the view for the equalization, the only thing on my screen is equalization. Where if I'm looking at the home screen here and now I scroll over and I'm trying to do the equalization here, that works good. But if I'm doing it from the home screen, I'm still making changes, but they're itty bitty. So I don't try this just strictly for me to see what the overview of the setup. The meters, this is a quick way to find a mic on stage. Somebody runs up there and says, hey, what channel am I on? And you don't know what mic they picked up. If you say, talk in the mic, and they go, hey, whatever channel they're on, like these are probably your choir mics right now if I were going to guess, because they're 4 and they're hot. So you can see by me talking that those 4 mics are picking up my voice. So if somebody said, hey, where are your choir mics? Without me even looking at your board, I'd say probably 6, 7, 8, and 9. But if somebody picks up a solo mic somewhere on stage, you go, oh, okay, I see you're on channel 3. If the fader is red, it means it's muted. If it's gray, it means it's unmuted. So that's just a quick, gives you a quick overview glance. Same thing with your mix buses here. This should correspond. You'll notice if I mute it here, it turns red. If it's unmuted, that's what you're going to see. So all of these are unmuted. The routing. This is something that you set up one time and you really don't mess with much. You know, us as touring guys, we're constantly changing this based on the application that we're working within. You guys have it set right now. Obviously, you had an analog board in here before. Everything's coming into the board locally, so you have everything set local. All that means is that everything's physically plugged into the back of the board. If you were using AES 50, that would mean that you probably had a digital snakehead put in the back, and you had routed your floor boxes and such back to the snakehead, in which case you would set your inputs. Likewise, instead of local 1 through 8, you'd be AES 50 1 through 8, then AES 50 7 through 18. So this is the routing. So in the output routing, this just says of the outputs right here on the back, or with an S16 digital snake if you had it, what goes to what. So if I look at this, output 1 is actually routed to a mix bus, and it's mix bus 1 and it's post fader. So this lets me know that this is probably just running a monitor, which as you see it is, it's a choir bus. And I can go to 2 and I can see that mix bus 2 is routed to mix bus 2. So you're pretty much in a 1-to-1 configuration all the way down through here. Now you should have a difference when you get to your sub channel. Okay, so when we go into the setup, this is where we can see globally how we've done things. This again, on this particular section, once this is set, you really shouldn't have to mess with it again. Configuration, this is the way you want things to do. Like if I were to go down to some of these, I can turn this on, and you notice that when I just touch the fader, how it follows whatever channel I'm on. Y'all may like that, and I can leave it that way if you want. I do that. I like remote. Y'all are not using that, but this would be if you had an external MIDI controller that was triggering a laptop that was fed into here. The GUI interfaces are set up on this. Y'all are not going to be using that. The network, this is important. I assume that there is a router plugged into this. Yes, so wherever your router is, yeah, right over there, this is how you know, like if I take my phone and I bring it in here and I want to connect to your console, I'm going to open up my app and I'm going to type in that IP address, which then allows me to have access to your console once I'm logged on to your router. So that you do use a lot. The scribble strip is a quick way to be able to input the labels on each of the channels. You can do it through here and it'll tell you exactly what it is. So you can see, like, let's go back to channel 1 is labeled piano. So you see it's labeled piano there. That's the scribble strip, just gives you the ability to globally get in quickly and change these. Or you can go into the preamp section and gain the preamp up so that they hear themselves more in their ears without affecting the house. So that's something that happens a lot when they're using in-ear monitoring system, and that's done in the setup. Over at the preamp section, I can change the input setting by selecting it here. So this corresponds to that for the in-ears. This is like a master control. This is the master control for the in-ear levels. If you start adjusting that during the service to raise or lower their levels, you could kill them because it gets really loud or really soft here. We're going to talk about how to adjust the in-ear systems, but this is if you've adjusted it right here and they still say, man, I just cannot hear it. Then you know, okay, so the output preamp is not loud enough. That's where you go to your setup, you go over to your preamps and you turn these levels up, and we'll address that as well. The last one is a card. Y'all are not necessarily using a card, or are you? I do not see it, but what that does is that card enables you to hook up a laptop and capture individual channels. And it says that you have the USB card, which is the default card that's in here. So if you hook the laptop up with some sort of like Logic or Cakewalk or Sonar or any of a number of digital audio workstations, you would be able to route the outputs of this into that laptop to capture individual channels. So like this is a master 2-channel mix, just left and right. When you come off of the USB on the back into another laptop, it captures each channel totally individually, so you can post mix the service. If you totally mess the mix up here, or your TV mix doesn't sound good, it gives you the ability to go back and fix it after the service is over. So that's what that is. Yeah, that's a really nice feature. Library, this is kind of cool. What the library effects allows you to do is to do 2 things primarily. This is for equalization. So I'm gonna choose a channel that you guys are not currently using, and let me just do a demonstration here. In the library, this would be, let's just say for instance, since the first one up is a bass guitar. Let's say I have a bass guitar here and I'm really new to the soundboard and I don't understand how do you equalize a bass guitar. Okay, so I could go over here and I could go, oh look, there's a bass guitar EQ. And if I load that preset to the channel that's selected, and I say yes, notice what happened, it changed, but also that EQ curve loaded into the channel automatically. Now you would say, well, I know what I want it to sound like, why would I need that? Here's the reason. Let's say, for instance, you have 4 choir mics and you EQ one choir mic and they're all the same brand, all the same basic setup. You EQ that first choir mic and it sounds phenomenal. You do not want to have to jump through that whole process of EQing the other 3 exactly the same way. So what you would do is in the library, you would scroll all the way down to the bottom here and you'll notice that there are a whole bunch of blank spaces in there. And so what you would do is you could go in here and call this, save preset choir mic, and then all I would have to do, like if this were choir mic, that were choir mic, all I'd have to do is select this, load preset choir mic EQ that you created, because when you create it, you can save it to a name here. So I would just load preset, load preset, load preset, load preset. Now all 4 choir mics are EQ'd exactly the same, but I didn't have to go through and change anything. So in the library setting, this gives you the same thing with effects. You can copy and paste effects, and you can route them specific ways that you want to. Again, these are things that we use in an application where things are changing all the time, where you guys are pretty consistent. It's really not necessary. On the effects, in the effects tab, this gives you obviously the ability to choose the effects that you want. Like when the bar is around it, it's selected. I can do this to go to whichever one I want to go through, and I can select any of the 8. By pushing it in, it brings it up. By using the tabs down here, I can access the physical knobs that are on this and give you the ability to see the various things that are here. You'll notice this is effects 1. As I go across now, I'm looking at 2, which is my hall reverb. 3 is a stereo delay. 4 is a stereo chorus. These are the default settings, and quite honestly, I use them too. They sound good. I don't really have a need to change them. Now, I do use these, and I see that you guys are not using these. When we do some troubleshooting here, we're gonna insert these. What this gives me the ability to do is, like, you have choir wedges up there, and you have floor monitors, and one of the first things that you said is we're having feedback issues, okay? Well, part of it is that you have 4 dual 31 band EQs that you're not using. You can use these to fix those feedback issues. So I would play music to try to create the feedback, or turn on the pastor's mic, or whatever it is that creates the feedback. I would go in here and assign this channel to his microphone channel. As it's feeding back, I would use this to scroll across, and I could dial down the frequencies that I see feeding back, and boom, we just resolve that situation. So that'll be something that'll be good for you guys to do. All right, so utility. Utility, again, is giving you some of the same options that we had under library. When you press utility, you can actually copy and paste EQ curves. You can do routings. There's a lot of different features in here that we use because, again, I can take one choir mic, I can set it up to route it appropriately. I can set the EQ curves on it. I can set the effect settings that I want. I can set all the monitor settings. So I'm setting like 10 things, and rather than having to go through each channel and do that, I can go in here and I can save a preset which contains everything up here that I've set about a specific channel, and then I can go to the next channel and recall that same preset, and it not only recalls the EQ curve setting, it recalls every setting, the routing included. So it just gives you the ability to do a lot more